Om, 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 om. Oh, honestly unbalanced.
What noun you call yourself? And when I ask that question, what noun you call yourself, the rationale is that when I first met you, I think we were both teaching at an Om Yoga show in Manchester. Maybe I met you in London. I forget. I've met you multiple times in person. I believe mainly at the Om Yoga shows. And as far as I knew, you were not just a yoga teacher, but you were teaching yoga, and that was your thing, and you were teaching trainings around the UK. And then I've kind of watched you over the years, and just doing many things, and I see you in front of like huge TV screens that look like you're like hosting an episode of Britain's Got Talent in COVID, that kind of vibe. There's lots going on. So what are you now?
I think it's evolving, and it has been evolving for some time. Yoga, I think, has been the outside, the packaging, if you will, for many years, and has been my doorway in many ways. But it's really just me sharing my personal journey, with whoever cares to listen, and if it contributes to people and helps them change their life in some way or impacts their life in any way at all, then I'm happy to share it. So as far as a noun, to be honest, I'm still trying to work it out. But I'd say like there's a blend of yoga, meditation, deep transformational work, inner work, and healing as well. So energy work has been my latest string to my bow in the last sort of 5 or so years. So a mix of things, and generally, depending on who I'm talking to and a language that they can relate to. If it's someone, who's very empathic and energetically connected, then, we talk about healing and energy work. If it's yoga people who are more, in tune with the physical, then, we have a conversation about the physical. But ultimately, it's all about connecting, to a potential within. So I'm still scratching my head on trying to explain that.
And you started, you didn't start, but at some point you were in the corporate world for a decade, was it? And you found yoga and meditation, I believe, to help you with the stress of the corporate world. And what made you decide to leave and follow this path then? Was there a complete turning point for you? Was it quite gradual? How did it happen?
Yeah, so corporate wasn't even something that I planned. To be honest, if I was to maybe just give you a quick, run through on my journey, I think it started when I was a kid, and, I was the tiniest kid in school. I used to get bullied. I know, Adam, you're into martial arts as well. And because I got bullied, next year we moved to the city. This was me when I was living in Malaysia. Got into martial arts, didn't expect it, ended up training for national, ended up being in the Olympic squad for Malaysia and competing. And then, that was full contact, and then I sustained injuries. So later I got to a point where I realized at 16, 17 years old, like, maybe there's no future in this, and I think I want to do something else. Obviously, my coaches were really pleased about that. So I left and went to university instead. And, I was like, I really don't know what to do. My dad was like, what do you want to study? And I'm like, I have no idea. I think I'm good at math. So what can I do with math? So I went into computing science, which was probably the weirdest thing to do. And I kept finding myself in just all these strange things. So I got into, university. I was fumbled my way through it. I got jobs, and then I lived in Australia for many years, went through corporate. And corporate was a journey in and of itself. It was another schooling. Martial arts was like a schooling. Corporate was another schooling. And by the time I got, a decade and a bit, I was in like 13 years or something, in corporate, I realized that something was stirring inside of me, and I just felt kind of soulless. Not that corporate is bad, it just wasn't for me. And I remember there was a very clear moment where one of my senior managers that I was reporting to, I was working on a project with him. And I'm sorry for the graphic nature of this, but there's one day I was in the bathroom, in the toilet, and I could hear, because he breathes very heavily, so I realized he was there in another cubicle, and this guy had trouble peeing, to put it simply. He was so stressed out, he was so in his head, and I could hear him, and then he left, and I went to wash my hands, and I was like looking at myself in the mirror, and I thought, if this is all I can, that's probably my next step in a few years. If this is all I can do with my life, and like look at me point blank, in the mirror, And like the words in my mind was just like, shame on me if this is all I can do with my life. And but then it was like, okay, but what do I want to do with my life? I had a life where you could say it was pretty good, like the six-figure salary and whatever. I was just comfortable, but something in just felt empty. I was living in, a beautiful city. I was in Sydney, sit in the bus, going to work every morning, and the sun is shining, and Sydney Harbour. And as I'm working in, heading into the city centre for work, in my suit, and I look at people in the bus, and so many of them were just looking down. They weren't even kind of looking at, the view. So much was stirring within me, and it all just culminated. Yoga was this thing that was in the background. In corporate, when I first started corporate, I discovered this thing called stress. My face was breaking out, and I was like, went to different people, and they couldn't explain what was going on. It just brought me on. So on one side, I was doing corporate, and on the other side, I was trying to heal my body. I heard about this thing called yoga, and I was like, well, okay, I don't want to do just a couple of stretches and fall asleep. I want to do something active because I was an athlete. And back then I was fit. So I was like, I need to do something. And then yoga just started me on this journey of, to be honest, like I remember I was in Ashtanga class, and the teacher at that time, I remember back in time, she was trying to teach me to kick up into handstand. And I was kicking so hard, and she's like, Dylan, who are you fighting? And I realized like, wow, I was actually fighting with myself, as this martial artist, but here's this analogy of me just fighting and competing with myself. And it was just, there's so much going on, and me trying to work out so many things about life and myself, and just fumbling around really. And corporate was another thing in my life, and it was like, what do I do with this? And where do I go with my life from here? And, then by that point, some years of yoga, and the yoga practice was just there as a foundation. I just go to the studio. There's a studio that I loved going to, and I'd go there every day. But on this side, there was this like, stirring within me of like, I don't know what I want to do with my life, and where do I go with this? Then it kind of kicked off into the next part of the journey, when my yoga teacher there kind of planted a seed, and then it led to the next part into the yoga journey.
There's lots of directions we could go in there. At least I kind of want to ask, how did you know he was peeing and not a number two? But we don't need to go down that route. But the one route the one route I'd love to go down is, I guess many people think, okay, it's corporate, and corporate can ruin you. And if I'm not doing corporate, I need to go down something completely different. Do you think there is any way? And of course, this isn't for every person, but to have a corporate job and still be happy and embodied, and I guess incorporate what you've learned from yoga in how you deal with people and projects in the corporate world. Because I think a lot of the conversations we've had on this podcast is often, and this is, I guess, more down to the individual, but that individual feels that they need to get out of that corporate world, which is right for the individual. But then maybe there is, almost to our listeners, kind of a demonizing of it. If they are still in that world, like, oh, do I need to escape it? So the question is, do you think people can still be part of that, yet be embodied and happy and content people? And then what would be the strategy for that?
I think, I heard some I don't know, someone's podcast or video the other day, and there's a moment when this person talked about, finding life's magic in the mundane. I don't think it was the exact words, but it was something like that. Essentially, it's like finding the divinity in each moment, no matter what you're doing, And I think whether, you're working in corporate, or whether someone is, a bin man, or like sweeper on the road, or a cleaner or whatever, there is no difference. Do you know what I mean? It is a thing that we do, and someone could be, living their life purpose doing that. Do you know what I mean? And it's like my cleaner, for example, he's the happiest guy I've met. He's one of the most joyful people I've met, and I just love having him here every week, because he's just so, I don't think he's even aware of it, but he's just in his flow, in his element. He's doing what he, I think he loves it. And, he takes care of his children. He loves his family. Who's to say that is bad? Who's to say corporate is bad? Someone could be, in corporate, and that's their dharma. Maybe through whatever the challenges they're facing and whatever it is that they're going through every day, that's them living their highest potential. So I don't think it's about leaving corporate and becoming a yoga teacher. I mean, frankly, a lot of yoga teachers need to learn lots of things that we learn in other areas.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I often say the world doesn't necessarily need more yoga teachers. The world needs more people that incorporate yoga teaching into their other life.
We need to get someone in the corporate world on the podcast.
What do you think that particular boss that you had at that time? I imagine you've worked with people since like him in various settings. What advice would you give to him now, like having explored all these pathways, to help him still do his job, but live in a more mindful, present way and be able to pee?
That's a great question. I think just the last bit of your question there is the answer, which is, doing whatever it takes to be in the present moment. And actually that is, a practice for all of us, to do what it takes to be in the present moment. And I like to keep things simple. So generally I would say, okay, the simplest way I know, which simple doesn't mean easy, is to pay attention to your breath and your body right now, because at least the breath and body we can relate to in a tangible way. And essentially that was my journey as well. It's like all of this energy stuff was just all too weird and crazy for me back, when I was a corporate guy. Any of this stuff was just like too woo-woo and weird and crazy, and like even just doing postures, yoga postures, which is physically tangible, was like, yeah, weirdos, so I think it's about coming back to what brings you back into the present moment. So, it doesn't mean even you have to be like doing posture or sitting in meditation. Essentially, it's paying attention, paying attention to the richness of this moment, whether we like it or not, and that's also part of the paying attention. It's like paying attention to the dialogue that's going on in the head.
Do you know what's been really an interesting thing for me in the last 13 weeks since having our little baby boy? I used to think of meditation as, sitting and trying to stop your thoughts, or at least watch your thoughts. And, that was my meditation practice. But I feel like I failed every time. I was just constantly thinking of things. Whereas having Sunny is like a meditation, because you can only be 100% present. Otherwise, you're putting him in danger. You just have to be completely present with this little baby. So actually, meditation doesn't have to look like that. It doesn't have to be, sitting in front of your altar and finding time each day to consciously meditate. It can be, being with your baby or something else. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. So, like in the 8 limbs, we talk about meditation, dhyana, dharana. Dhyana is the state of paying attention. And essentially is paying attention to anything and everything, despite the dialogue in the head that goes, I like this, I don't like that, this is nice, that's not so nice, this person, or why just that stuff that's going on that is all part of the experience of the moment.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that we're going through, whether you're chopping vegetables or going for a walk, or it's all an opportunity to interact in this moment.
Have you come across a guy called Randy Porsche? He wrote something called The Last Lecture. This was maybe he did a last lecture, and then the text was written about it. And he worked in Carnegie Mellon Institute. I think I'm saying that right, Carnegie Mellon. And he'd worked for Disney and Pixar over the years, and he got diagnosed with a type of cancer. And this was his quite literal last lecture. And it was for his children, really. So a big audience. It was a lecture for his children. And one thing he said in that was that you miss your moments, you miss your life. And that stuck with me. So, I listened to this when I was perhaps 18. And just that little phrase of you miss your moments, you miss your life really, really, really struck me. But one thing I want to follow up with Holly's observation about meditation and babying,
Babying, that's a new one.
Looking after a baby. Is there a difference you perceive between a formal practice and an informal practice? So, you get sometimes people say, running is my meditation, doing the gardening is my meditation. And my belief is that you can have the quality of being present while you're running. You can stop the chitta-vritti while you're running, but a more formal practice is what enables you to do that. And there is a difference between the formal meditation and then how you then incorporate that in life. And I think you need the formal practice. So what do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's easy to say like, look, every moment should be a meditation, but if someone's really, we've trained ourselves to be in this incessant thinking, and that's all we know. It's like, that's the walls of a room, let's say, and we're trapped in it. You can say, well, that's a meditation. The person's like, well, I don't know, what do you mean? Like, how do I relate to that? So I think there is time and place for that, and for most of us, to have some practices, which I guess essentially is why the yogis created the yogic practices, and whatever teachings, they all created their practices to help, break it down and make it more tangible and practical, and have something, if we need something to do, then it's like, okay, here's something to do, here's a journey, here's a progression path that you can follow, rather than just, well, be present in the moment. And it's like, well, I think I'm being present in the moment. Well, what does that mean? But like we're just completely in our heads, just off with our thoughts.
It's a controversial question. What is so great about the present moment? Because we talk about it so much. Oh, it's all about being present. But, I like thinking about things sometimes and thinking about the future and planning things. So what does the present moment actually give you? And why is it such a thing in the yoga world?
I don't know. I can't speak for the whole yoga world.
For you personally, then.
I can speak from my experience. I think the present moment is a doorway to something greater within. It's a doorway to our own divinity within. And despite whatever experience that we're having in the present moment, sometimes actually having a difficult moment wakes us up more, because it's like, oh, it makes you pay attention. And essentially, it is the action of paying attention, act or action of paying attention. And that the present moment then opens us up to beyond the veil of what seems to be reality, and perhaps a higher an awareness of like a higher consciousness, or like a connection to a higher consciousness or higher mind or higher love, whatever you want to call that.
It's all we have, isn't it? It's really like the past is just rumination and the future is fantasy.
At what point did you realise you are not your thoughts? I saw a little reel on your Instagram about this, so I'd like to know, is there a moment where you thought, oh, okay, I'm not my thoughts?
Yeah, I've thought about that quite a bit. I'm like, I need to pick a moment, because I might get asked at some point. And I think for me, my journey was just gradual.
Yeah.
And I definitely had moments in life where life's had to slap me around to wake me up. It's like, pay attention. And then, other moments where I actually voluntarily paid a bit more attention. So sometimes I think we pick some of those big moments and say, oh, I had this, big cathartic experience, or this like extreme experience, and there was my moment. I think the moment was unfolding through my life. I think the moment began when I was a kid. I was a little kid, in North Malaysia, in living in a rubber plantation on my bicycle, just like trying to make, whatever, like wheelies or screeching the back wheel, and just not knowing anything different, about life, and just living in, I guess at that time was just bliss.
And let's talk about, I guess, a career now. So you became a yoga teacher, and then I guess two big things. There's one, you actually setting up a studio, which was, does it still exist, that studio?
No,
but at the time, it was when I moved to London, that was one of the big studios to go to. And then also kind of taking your show on the road and doing kind of trainings all over. When did that jump happen? And when did you decide to actually put some roots down and own a studio? And then equally, when did you decide to rip those roots up, I guess?
Yeah, so it kind of started, maybe I'll take a couple of steps back. So continuing from that, where I left off in corporate. So at that time, I, just for fun, I did a yoga training. And the guy who owned the studio in Sydney, in Australia, where I was, I just did it for fun because I loved the yoga. I was there every day, for practice, did the training. And somewhere during the training, he said, you're moving, like you think you're moving to London, and and that was a journey as well. And he was like, "You should create something like this over there." And I was like, "What do you mean? What do you mean nothing like this exists over there?" He was like, "Well, I mean, they're a little bit behind the trends. They don't have something like that there yet." And I was like, "What?" He goes, "But you should do it. You should create something like this." And I was like, "No way. I mean, I've got to find, I don't want to be, I'm a corporate guy. I'll just turn up. I want to go to, the UK and work for some time, and then I don't know, like go back and buy a house and live happily ever after or something." But on the other side, there was this stirring within me, kind of searching for what am I going to do with my life, from this point. And that took a couple of years actually. It was stirring inside while I was in corporate. So the last couple of years of corporate was like that. Um, so then he planted the seed. I did the training and I was like, yeah, and I'm just going to go traveling. There's family stuff that was sorted. So I felt, okay, I'm ready now. So I went on the road. I came, I landed in Austria. I have some friends in Austria, and they were like, "Hey, we're gonna jump in a van. It's gonna get cold because it's in October. They're like, it's gonna get cold. Winter is coming. We're gonna jump in a van. We're gonna drive to Spain. You should come with us." And I was like, "No, I've already booked a meditation. I booked a Vipassana retreat in Switzerland. I'm not going." So anyway, long story. They convinced me. Jumped in the van. It was great. We ended up in Valencia in Spain, and I ended up in this. I was renting a room in someone's flat, and they became friends. And I was practicing yoga every day because that was kind of like one of my anchors. And I just spent some months trying to work out, like, okay, what am I going to do with my life? And then there was this thought of what my teacher planted in my head, saying like, yeah, you should just do something like this over there. I was like, can I? Is it going to be possible? So every day as I was practicing, and then my friend said, hey, you can teach. Why don't you, will you teach us? I was like, look, I'm not a yoga teacher, because in my head I just did it for fun. I wasn't a yoga teacher. I got the qualifications, and I said, look, I'll practice every day at 6 p.m. And if you want, you can come practice next to me, but I'm not teaching you. I'm not a yoga teacher. They're like, I'm fine. So one turned up, one became two, two became four, and next thing I know, at 5:45, within just like a couple of weeks, few weeks, there's all these people outside in the front door. They'd ring the doorbell at 5:45. I'm like, who are all these people? I'm not teaching. So they just came to practice next to me. So they'd turn up, clear the living room, turn on the heating, and they didn't even have yoga mats. They'll turn up with like towels and rugs and things because they'd never done yoga before. And they're like, like ready to be taught. And I'm like, I told you guys, I'm not teaching. I'm going to practice. You can just follow. I'm not giving any instructions. I'm not a yoga teacher. They're like, fine. So it didn't take too long before I didn't have space to practice at 6 p.m. in my slot. So, after cussing them a little bit, I was like, all right, fine, I'll teach you guys. So I started teaching. And as I was teaching, I found that I really loved it. There's something in me that just kind of lit up. And I was like, okay, so I need to stop lying to myself about this. And that kind of just hit me. So I booked a ticket. Next week I was in the UK. I spent the next month or so planning. I was in a friend's house while he was away. And that was the beginning. So I just had this idea that, I want to create something really cool in London. I want to create an amazing community. And also it was like, I don't know if I can cope with the cold. So I think I'm going to create a heated studio. And literally I just turned up with 2 backpacks, and enough rent for 3 months. I think my third month into setting up my business, which is rented rooms, and running around with heaters. I hit a low point. It was like, shit. I looked at my spreadsheet and I'm like, I'm paying for all these people to turn up to my class every week. This sucks. Like, I don't know anything about business. Why am I doing this? Why don't I just go back to corporate? So that was the journey, beginnings of my learnings in business. And yeah, that went on to be in my studio in South London, which I had for like around a decade.
Did you have like a big an external investor for that to
Not
happen?
at all. Not at all. So I basically started with rented rooms and like, this dingy church hall and whatever. And I had a schedule. My students would follow me around. And then, I was hunting around for like a space and, and then learning about commercial landlords and just, I mean, it was just crazy. It was like I was a new place. I had no friend, one friend who lived in the area. And when I was about to give up, thank God I had that friend because she and her friend were like, Dylan, you can't give up. There's something in here that you just have to continue. They're like, I've never done yoga before. And like, I can't, I love these classes and it's doing so much for me. I was like, oh God. So, one thing led to the next and went to another small space. That space, I was about to move out from that. And then, I think third year into it, so I had this vision that day when I was about to give up, and I thought, my God, I'm paying for all these people to turn up to my class, looking at my spreadsheet. I was thinking, what the hell am I doing? I should just go back to corporate. And then something stirred within me, and I asked the question to myself, I'm like, why the hell am I doing this? And that set up another journey. And around that time, I was like doing all these, transformation programs, doing, deep work and trying to heal stuff with my dad. That's another story. Um, so that led me into finding my why, which I see, say, to open hearts and awaken minds. And the moment that came to me, it was just this emotional, powerful, cathartic moment, and I was just like crying like a baby at that moment. I don't know why. I'm like, what is this? And that still drives me till today, to open hearts, awaken minds. And it's just taken so many different expressions, from yoga to meditation to healing work. So the studio, yeah, like moved from one studio to another. In my third year, that vision that I had that day I was going to give up, I had this vision of like 90, it looked like 80 or 90 people in a room. And 3 years later, I was standing in front of my class Monday evening, and there was about 93 people, I think, in my class. They were matched right up
Wow.
into the bathroom. I took one studio, and then, the neighbor moved. So we took the other studio, cut the wall out. It just organically grew. When yoga was still a weird thing, there, I don't know how it happened, but, all these people started to turn up, and we just had a great time. It was an amazing community. We just had a great time. People didn't want to leave. They would just be like, stay after class. 10 p.m., when I'm like sweeping the floor and rolling the mats, they're like, no, no, let me roll the mat. Like, no, you're paying customer. Like, you're not rolling. They're like, no, no, no. They just wanted somewhere to hang out. So there's this amazing community that formed. And as at some point, the business, you could say the business was doing well. It just looked good from the outside. We'd have like 80, 90 people turning up to a class, and I didn't have the resources to manage that. Suddenly just kind of like blew up. There's this like crowd control. I look on the system, and then there's like 60, 70, 80 people booking into the class. And I'm like, oh my God, jump on my bike, get there, and crowd control. Like, okay, who's been here before? Go that way down the stairs to the street. Who hasn't been this way, like beginners, and then we'd like trying to get them into class, and then they'd leave, and then another 80 people would turn
Oh
up.
my gosh.
It was a cool time, but definitely had my lessons, and that was a point when my landlord's kind of just kicked me out overnight.
Oh, really?
And we ended up in a nightclub for 3 months, 3.5 months, and that's another story.
Oh my
And before we
gosh.
found our final studio, which I landed in for some time.
What do you
Yeah,
think
I
it
definitely had my fair share of hard knocks.
What do you think it was that initially drew all these people towards you? Do you think it's because you started doing your own inner work and they sensed that in you and they wanted a leader of some sort, or what do you think it was that filled your classes so quickly?
I think I was just oblivious. Really. I just loved what I was doing. I think it was my passion of what I was sharing, which people felt. I was just starting my first training, yoga training, teacher training. And, so I was like getting the first crowd of people coming into my first training back in the day. And so I hired all these teachers that came to me, and it was normally just people practicing. And I think people heard about it. They're like, oh, there's this studio that, there's this stuff, these classes are going on. And then I guess people came. There was no Facebook ads and all that sort of stuff back in the day. We didn't do any flyering. It was basically just people telling each other. And I think, one thing, if I look back, was that it was just built on generosity and just having a great time, and there was a buzz in the studio, and everyone has just loved it. It was like every class was, people would just go on a journey. Classes were heated, and that 90 minutes was like they would go somewhere and something would happen in their body and their mind, and they were just like, I want more of that in my life. And then there was a community element, which was accidental. Like I didn't have this big strategy of creating a community. They just kind of gravitated towards it. And I think back in the day, if I put it back to, there's something in me that just wanted to share and give. And, I didn't have a big business strategy behind, just kind of all just happened really. Enough to motivate, gave me a taste of it. And after that, it was like, okay, now, like, where could it go now? And let's see what happens. And then after that, it was just then my learning experiences came.
I think when you've got your really powerful why that makes you cry at the core of everything, everything else just kind of naturally falls into place around it, doesn't it? If you're doing it just to make money or to get ahead or it's competition, it doesn't quite work as well. But when it's that real pure intention and from the heart, it seems that everything just naturally will fall into place for you because you're creating something beautiful, which you have done.
Yeah, perhaps, people were feeling that, my team was feeling that they were expressing their version of it or their own whys. And it was just a really, cool space. It was very simple. It literally, my studios were so simple. There was no investment in it. It was very much like shoestring. The last studio we ended up in, which was our home for some years, just off Abbeville Road in Clapham, it was actually a smaller studio, and that's when I started to learn a bit more about business strategy. And then, we quadrupled our business within, I think it was like a year or something like that. And at that point, like, we got to a point where we were turning around £1 million, and the money was nice, but it wasn't about the money. Again, it was just about the community. And, people would walk in the door and say, oh, now I can relax. Now I can be myself. And that was just one of the intentions. It's like, we want people to turn up and just feel like they're coming home and, everyone's family, and I used to do, I don't know what other people did outside, but it's like when you go into my class before it start or our classes, it's like, like what I call like an Asian fish market. People will just be talking and, this and that. Hey, how you doing? And there was just this buzz in the studio, whether it was in the class before or after, or, in the changing rooms, or like people would just walk out to the tube station together. It's like, hey, what's your name? And, so there was just this, it became a space for people to connect. I remember, I think it came also from like, people used to tell me, why are you moving to London? Like, people are not friendly over there. And I was like, really? Let me go check it out for myself. And when I got here, I was sitting in the tube and I looked at people and I thought, people are not unfriendly here. They just seem a little bit shy. They just maybe need an excuse to have a conversation. And that's what actually was my experience. So then I thought, I'm going to create a space for people where I'm going to give them an excuse to talk to each other. So if people would turn up to class and sit quietly, I'd go up to the front and I'd say, hi, everyone, my name is so-and-so, but it's about to start in 5 minutes. I'm going to give you a little exercise. I want you to turn around, meet 3 people around you. And actually today I want you to get off your mat and go to the other side of the room and meet some other people around, the other side of the room. Find out something like, what's their favorite yoga pose or something. And I'll say, I'm going to come back and I'm going to test you. So make sure you do it. See, in 5 minutes. And I'll walk out of the room and then it's like, oh, hello. People start talking to each other. And that just became normal. So after a while, any new person came in, they were just enveloped in this friendliness, this warmth, this loving environment. So we didn't have, we had one shower, one toilet, the change room was this like little room upstairs. It was literally mat to mat. We had one block space between the mats. We had tape marks so people would put their mats down. And some people were just kind of like, what's this? But then they would just get kind of drawn into the flow of what was happening there. And they just loved it. Either they loved it and stayed, and they just stayed for a long time, until they moved out of the area, or they didn't like it and they just left. It's like, yeah, cool.
Weren't ready for it.
You don't need to please everyone, do you?
No.
You don't need to please everyone to make money. You need
you
a few people to really like it, and that's it. But it's
Obviously.
really hard to build community, isn't it? I think, and there's different strategies. I guess I feel that in big city centre studios, it's much harder. There's so much going on. And there are people going in all directions. It's all very transient. I feel that studios slightly out of a city or in smaller cities do a little bit better. And I also think, and this is from experience in hot studios, that studios that offer almost exclusively one thing, there is the most community because the people have so much more in common because they've decided to invest their money in just one thing. And I guess you get it in hot studios. You get it in, I've seen it in like boxing gyms or CrossFit gyms. But yeah, I think the more targeted a place is, the perhaps easier it is to build community to some degree. There's still a whole load of work. And obviously you did so much actively to cultivate that community. But it is a really hard thing to cultivate, especially if you live in a big city, isn't it?
So I had this, back then I was started like I was teaching at Tri Yoga. Somehow I got in because my teacher Baron Baptiste, and that was so every Wednesday I'd go and teach at Tri Yoga in Primrose Hill back in the day when they had it. And I was like, wow, there's such a different environment here. Obviously they had all this funding and Jonathan and all that. And then the other place I was asked to teach was at Kicks gym. I don't know. I think they're still around in
Yeah,
Chelsea.
private members. Yeah, they're still there. They've opened a drop in
Yeah.
as well, but they're still. I think they've moved location, but still exist. Yeah.
Right. And then, then I'd go back home to Clapham in my tiny little, 8 mat person studio, and the train literally open the window and there's like trains, so you can feel it. I'm like, do you hear the train? And they're like, oh, the train. People didn't even realize that one of my first studio that I had, I just decided, I was like, I need to find something. I don't have the money. I don't have £1 million or more, to pump into a studio that is going to be fancy. Maybe someday, hopefully, I'll be able to afford it. But right now, this is all I've got. But what I can pour into it is as much love as I can, and create an environment where people can connect, and I think it doesn't matter if it is, we did actually just have one, style at that time. And that's all we focused on and specialized in. I think times have changed. I got a student of mine who's got a really successful studio up in Nottingham. Um, and she's got an amazing community. During the pandemic, her strategy, and which I don't think she, was strategic about it. She just loved to create a space, was about community. So all these people could turn up and, it's like, again, that's just a home for them to come and hang out and meet other people. And yoga is just this thing that you're doing, but, it's more about, the community. And I think creating community for me was just like, I just need to give them an excuse to say hello. These people are a little bit shy. They just need an excuse, and when I was on the tube, I thought, wow, these guys have to do it twice a day, 5 days a week. If I had to do this, I would want to kill someone. How are they not more aggressive? Like people would turn up to the yoga class and I thought, you guys are amazing. Like you haven't killed someone today. Like hats off to you because you've got to deal with that shit twice a day, 5 days a week, and you made it to class. So let's do this. Let's create a space where you can connect into something else. But you can put that aside.
Because if you were a yoga teacher now, you're on that tube like 10 times a day. I think there were some days that I am on my busy days, like literally like 10, maybe 10 plus tube journeys and train journeys.
So what happened after that then? You don't have your yoga studio anymore. So what was the next part of your journey?
So I stepped away from that business. The last studio we had, basically what happened was the laws changed and the commercial landlords could actually take their properties back and change it from commercial to residential. And if they did that, obviously they could sell it for 5 times more the money that they were making. The last building we were in, was a complex, and then they basically just pulled the rug from under our feet. Also, I had a business partnership that just was bad, wasn't working. So I had another learning experience there in business. So, that then set me off into another, it seems like every 10 or so years, I get my next thing to go on. So I just went, go on a nomadic journey. I go traveling again and just sit with myself. And then I realized I was like, okay, I can still, I've already developed this yoga training, this teacher training, which was infused with, deep transformational work. That was actually it just became more and more of my passion. It was just something that kind of found me. And when I first went and, learned it in wherever I learned it, I was like, how do I do this? How do I create, how can I create change in people like this? This is amazing. And it wasn't like, I want a big crowd. It was just like, I want to be able to have that impact on even one person. How do I do that? And like, maybe I can bring it back to my community. And I had just like the small community back then. So that my teacher trainings became this ground for me to develop as a facilitator of deep inner work, like transformational work. And still is, and it has evolved, for the last 15 or so years. So then I was like, okay, I don't need a studio. It was a big shift for me. It's like, wow, I'm losing my studio. And it's kind of heartbreaking because, I was stepping away from my community. I still get emails from people today, which, it's lovely to get it. Like sometimes they'll just say, no, I've been searching for another place like this and I can't find it. And it wasn't because it was fancy. We really were not fancy at all. It was just the most simple, basic, of environments. But it was a community, right? It was a feel of that. That's what they mean. And the energy in the classes. We had amazing teachers. So I realized that, the yoga trainings was my next thing that I can bring. And then it, I guess life was pushing me to bring it, to a wider audience. So I started traveling, and this was, I was doing everything in person until the pandemic hit. So I was traveling around and teaching in different places. And yeah, people, would come to the trainings. I didn't have, huge 100-person trainings, but the people that came, I guess it's not for everyone. It's like you need to be interested in really looking at yourself and working on yourself. And if you're not, then I'm not your guy, because I'm not interested in just surface level stuff. That's not my thing. So more and more and more. And that was the next part. So I just brought that, to the road, and, it allowed me to bring my training out of Clapham to Ibiza and Sri Lanka and Bali. And, it was a dream. I was like, can I ever do that? And then, I guess, we were doing it until the pandemic hit.
And then so I saw on your Instagram, I forget the name of these events that you do, where you're in front of many cameras and then that screen of hundreds of people behind you live. What on earth is going on there?
So that program is called Awaken. It's a 3-day. I mean, right now it's like live virtual, and I do it twice a year. I actually just did it a couple of weeks ago. It was born out of, I guess, me working on myself, and then me learning various modalities of transformation, bringing it into the yoga trainings. And then there was this thing in me that was like, should I still continue with the yoga? Or, like you said, and like, who are you? Like, what's the noun, right? And then there was this like, but I love yoga. Do I let it go? But then there's this other thing that was like, I can help people create change, and like I could do a healing or an intervention in an hour, someone could turn their life around, right? So I learned those skills. So I was like, I need to share this. So the last thing I did was my healing trainings. I went and I learned this modality, this healing modality and spent 3.5 months in Montana with the woman who channeled it, and did all the instructor level courses, and had no inkling to teach it at all. I still don't. I still say like I just went there for the healings, for the healings that was included. But after I came back from that, 3.5 months, my head was just it wasn't just my head. I was like pulled apart in every way I can possibly imagine and beyond. And I was like, what the hell just happened to me? So after like 3.5 months of that, what was stirring within me was like, I need to actually just put this out there. So December 2018, I launched my very first in-person Awaken program. And it literally was just like, I have no clue what the hell I'm going to say to people, and every time I went to prepare, I just had this feeling of like, no, put that away. And I'm like, oh shit, okay. So literally put this thing on my website, don't know how to explain it. I called it Awaken. I don't know what I said on the thing. I had a couple of testimonials from my, students, and I don't know, like 80 people booked, and turned out I booked this, ballroom at in this hotel in Charing Cross. And it just all happened. Like, I turned up there on day one, and the third, we had, a guy that was doing sound. I had my video guys there, and I was like, shit, I don't know what I'm going to say to these people. And third person, I said, how are you guys doing? They had microphones like you're holding. I'm cordless ones. So past the third person, third woman said, I'm feeling nervous. And I was like, so am I. And then she looked at me, and I looked at her, and then I looked at the crowd, and they looked at me. And then I said, I'm nervous because I actually don't know what I'm going to say this weekend. And then they looked at me like, is that a joke? And then there was this like awkward moment which prolonged itself for a while. And I looked at them and I said, no, I'm being honest. Like, I really don't know what I'm going to say to you guys, because every time I went to prepare something, I was guided not to. And I think the reason for that is because this weekend, if I had something scripted and pre-prepared, don't get me wrong, I'm not, lacking in content. I can just talk about stuff and teach you stuff. But if I had it all kind of like fixed, then it is more of the known. And this weekend is about going into the unknown, and then I said,
good save.
It wasn't even, I had no idea. Honestly, I had no idea what I was going to say. And that's what came out. And I was like, that's pretty good.
That's the best way.
Most of the time,
sometimes
this stuff comes out, and I'm like, I should write that down. My team would say, like, can you repeat that thing that you said? I'm like, man, I don't know what I said. Just film it, like record it, and we'll do something with the filming. So yeah, it was just 3 days I was going into the unknown. The sound guy who was at the back on Sunday when we finished came to me and said, so straight after that, the next was a student of mine who'd done teacher training 4 years ago. He basically just went off the rails. And he just went deep. He just didn't hold anything back. It's boom, everything came out. And I think the crowd was like, what have we just signed up for? What are we doing here? And that took like, this is like a 2 hour intervention.
Oh my
And the
gosh.
sound guy at the back came to me on Sunday and he said, I see a lot of speakers because that's what I do. I do sound for like speakers. Is then I've seen a lot of speakers. I don't know if I can swear on this,
Yeah,
Yes,
swear
go
one,
for
yeah.
it.
but a lot of speakers open up a group and fuck it up. And when you did that, when that guy took the mic that day, he said, I was honestly sitting back going, here we go. Another speaker thinking they've got it and someone's stuff. And I don't know. I mean, just whatever came through, and we went through the process. And he said, and then you turned that around, and we went for lunch. And I was like, okay, that was I've not seen that before. So and then we came back from lunch. Then you did it again, did it again, did it again. All weekend, all those people that shared, and no matter what they came up with, he said, I've never seen that before. I was like, I don't know how you do it. I said, dude, I don't know how I do it. He said, whatever it is, I need to be around this, and forget money, like just hire the equipment. I'm going to come and work for you for free. As long as you do these events.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to
Wow.
hire for sound. So he came, and then when he finished, then I was literally like packing my laptop. And then another guy came from the crowd, and he's like, Dylan, I do lighting for like over the years, like big bands, like the Police and whatever, He's like, I do lighting, and I would love to come and do lighting for your event for free. And I was like, is someone having a joke here? Like, these guys, he said, no, honestly. And he did. So he came, so I did 6 more in-person awakens. It was amazing. And some were bigger, some were smaller. But people came and like changed their lives. And then at the pandemic, I kind of switched it up, from really deep 3 days where people were just, I think, pulled apart in so many ways and put back together. Now there's, it's evolved now. It's a different structure. It is a bit smoother and still powerful, but like, it's now virtual. Obviously, the pandemic kind of first virtual one I did, I literally just during the pandemic, put all these blinds down. I hired a guy that could come and do the screens, move this couch. I wanted the screen. I don't know why, but I wanted the screen. So we had this like wall, like LED wall here in my flat during the pandemic, right? Had all my blinds shut, and my neighbors were like, Dylan, what are you up to in there? I was like, come check it out if you want, but I'm just doing some stuff this weekend. Don't worry about it. Just doing a broadcast, and that was our first, virtual awaken. And then the kind of screens that you see now is just, I've actually hired a proper space with 3-phase power because the screen needs it. And, it's a 3-day experience where people get to come and either dip their toe in and go further, or that's it. They got enough from the 3 days and they're good.
Right. There's 2 things I want to ask there. So one, like, do you miss in person? And will you do in person again occasionally? And then the other thing I want to ask, or I'd love you to speak to, is we might have people listening thinking, oh, you know what? I'm just going to turn up and be guided and just expose people, or let them be vulnerable. And yeah, I've seen yoga teachers also do that badly, like get people to talk about their childhood trauma, and then at the end of class, okay, namaste guys, see you later, here's some leaflets to my workshop if you're interested, and just leave people cold. So what would you say about, because this kind of stuff isn't per se regulated, like, you're clearly someone with incredible experience, incredible training, and a natural talent for it. So what would you say to people in terms of, I guess, two, I'm asking loads of questions now. I guess someone who is a to-be participant, how do they pick someone who can hold the space safely? And for someone that wants to do this, how can they make sure actually they're not just winging it, but they have a grounding in the knowledge required?
So I'll answer the online question first because it might be quicker and easier. So I do some things online. There's actually 2 in-person things that I do, which is a second part of our yoga training and a retreat for my one of the groups that I facilitate, and that's twice a year. So we do in-person stuff, but I haven't in the last couple of years. Like this year I wasn't at a yoga show or anything like that, and actually, I just felt like saying it wasn't the right time. So I was just like actually no to all the festivals that were opening up this year. So I didn't go to any of the festivals. I didn't go to any of the conferences. I actually just continue to do my thing. Probably next year I might. I don't know. Let's see. So there is a little bit of the in-person stuff that I'm doing, and I'm going to start opening it up back more. I think I'm kind of a little bit spoiled now because the virtual thing just works so well, and people. My biggest like question in my head was like, I wouldn't do this because I can't guarantee that it's going to deliver the quality that I want. People are going to have the shifts that they came to have, and if I can't guarantee that, I'm not going to do it. But the pandemic just kicked my ass and just I had to do it. So it was like, then I did it in dribs and drabs, and like I tested it in little sessions, and I was like, oh, wow, people are actually experiencing this. It is working. So I feel, with like in integrity to actually then start, launching a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And then obviously, over the last, well, now 2 years, 3 years, it's in full swing, and everything is online and some in-person stuff. So there's the first question. Hopefully that's answered.
Perfect.
I think the second question, you're absolutely right. It is completely irresponsible to go and open someone up, and leave them gaping open. It's not just yoga teachers. I've seen that done, with other so-called, sometimes so-called professionals as well. I think getting the training that is needed behind you is one part. And for me, the other part was like me doing my work as well. Like I still have mentors and teachers on a weekly basis. I'm digging up my stuff and working on it. And it's not easy and comfortable, definitely not comfortable, but I wouldn't dare stand in front of someone or a group and have, a depth of a conversation if I didn't feel hand to heart I could hold the space for that person. It's just point blank irresponsible, and people shouldn't do that, in no matter what their intention is. And I think underneath it all is a good intention, because you want to help, you want to help someone, but it's not cool.
No,
It's like, it's not trendy, it's not cool. Just stop doing it.
Yeah, totally.
Unless you can hold it.
And there's a weird, I guess, dynamic with kind of the modern world at the moment, in that there's an encouragement, to fake it till you make it. And there's an encouragement to, upsell yourself, make yourself sound more than you are, charge more money because you're going to. But actually, at the same time, in this, when you're dealing with people's lives and emotions, faking it till you make it is actually completely irresponsible.
Yeah. I mean, I have therapists on my faculty, qualified psychotherapists. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm not trying to be one. The process that I guide people through is a different process to therapy. But I have faculty members who are qualified registered therapists, and they will, we will have a conversation at our lunch, and they'll be like, I don't know how you did that. And I'm like, I don't know. It's a mix of the stuff that I've learned, and I'm also channeling in each moment. We're giving healings and stuff like that. So we've got all those covered. So if where I don't, there's like a blind spot, they will jump in. When they finish, I will jump in. And together, all the support structures are there in the program to make sure we don't leave any stones unturned, and people are all taken care of, because even though I'm not doing therapy, there is a therapeutic effect and there is a responsibility, and I don't take that lightly.
Should we go lighter though now, Hollow? Should we go quick fire?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, like, what's coming up next for you? What do you see coming up in the future? Do you plan these things, or do you just let it flow?
There is a plan, and otherwise, it'll just be more of a mess than it is. As far as in like what's coming up, as in events, is that what you mean?
Well, yeah, for you, yeah.
I mean, I do these awaken programs, these virtual awaken programs twice a year. That's, people want to get involved. That's the thing. I'm always kind of doing something for free online, just for people to come and check it out and, get to know, because I'm not everyone's guy, and like I swear and I just call things out as it is, and I don't take any bullshit, like I'm probably not an easy guy to work with, because that's just how I am. I make no apology for it. But, if someone actually wants someone who is going to have their back and speak the truth and call things out when no one else will, I do that. And obviously that's not the only thing I do. So for some people, they like it. Other people, they just get repelled, and that's cool. So there's a lot of free stuff. People can just, have a look. It's mostly online. and they can come and check it out and see if they like me or not. And if they don't like what I'm doing, they don't align with what I'm teaching, they definitely shouldn't do it.
Cool. Let's do some quick fire
Go
questions
for it.
now, if we could. What would you like to do more of? If you had a bit more free time, what would you be doing more of?
It's interesting. I was just thinking about that today. What would I do differently if, you know, things were different, like the responsibilities, were not there. I just love being in that role of facilitating someone's process. It's like when I'm doing that, I don't know, I guess thought is happening, but I'm there and I feel like I'm completely present with them. And there's an effortlessness. And it seems like everything else around my life, somehow is built around that. So I've geared my life so I can actually do as much of that as I can through my year and through my day. So I guess you could say, that's me living my purpose. And sometimes it comes out, in a yoga class, and, sometimes it's like in a meditation I'm teaching, and other times it's like I'm facilitating someone's process. So I think if you gave me a choice, if the universe said, hey, like I'll take care of everything else, you just turn up and, help people shift, right? And go across the line and connect with that greatness within themselves, that potential within themselves. I'll be doing that 24/7.
Oh, how lovely. So you just do more of what you're doing now.
Yeah.
What do you do to relax?
That's a good question. I need to do more of that. um, to be honest, I think because there's this part of me that is, like I guess it's the athlete, it's that professional athlete in me. I'm just like very driven on the inside. I have to be careful that I'm not burning my body out, because my body obviously needs sleep and rest. What I have been doing for like, last week, for example, has just been sleeping more, just making sure I'm getting 9 hours or some days more if I can.
I'm so jealous.
Giving myself, the opportunity just to rest. And then my kind of anchors are meditation and practice, and to be honest, like I don't get to the mat every day, but most days I make it to the mat. But my non-negotiable is meditation every day. So everything kind of, at least there's something there in the madness of it. But I love traveling. I love, obviously, my family. I haven't seen them for some years, so I'm going to go see them.
Oh, yeah.
And I've done a little bit of travel back, this year, which has been cool. So yeah, that's it really.
Perfect.
And then perhaps you could leave us with a quote, a motto, a mantra, a lyric, something that means something to you, something that gets you through the hard times, or something that inspires you to do new things.
I think at the core of it, actually, what was it today? The second part came to me. What was it? So it's like, I'm not my thought. And then reminding myself that I'm not my thought. And the second part came to me, and it's kind of gone now out of my head, but it was something about, so if I'm not my thought, then who am I? It's, it really is just like reminding myself, yeah, that's right. So all of suffering comes from our identification with thought, right? And our illusion of disconnect with the divine. So it's like reminding myself that, the thing that I'm going through right now is just a thing. It's just an event, and this, or like if it's something in my body or something in my life or whatever the challenging thing is, it's like, it is a creation of, it's like, it's a reflection of something that's going on inside here, probably for me to go and look at. It's an opportunity for me to look at. And you could say it's like, it's not real. Do you know what I mean? So I'm just reminding myself, it's like, yes, this is one version of reality, but this is not real. The ultimate truth, is all of it is a reminder, to me anyway, it's a reminder to connect to God within. And I'm not religious. I'm like, I don't follow any religion. I'm talking about the divine, God, quantum field, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Something greater within, and just reminding myself, like, if I'm struggling, it's because I've disconnected, and it's a reminder for me to reconnect. It's just like, wake up, reconnect. You've disconnected. It's like, you plug an appliance into the wall. You pull the plug out. It's like, oh, should I pull the plug out? I need to plug back in.
It's
Love
a nice
that.
reminder to reconnect. It's a lovely way to end.
Yeah,
Thank
really
you so
lovely.
much. And just remind us of your website or social media where people can find you.
Yeah, so it's just first name, last name, Dylan Ayaloo. I know it's a little bit of an odd last name. And I think if you search on social, Instagram is at Dylan Ayaloo. Website is dylanayaloo.com, or there's an awaken.dylanayaloo.com, which actually has, more of the stuff than the Dylan Ayaloo website.
Amazing.
It really just search my name.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Honestly unbalanced.